call this Oscoda Township regular board meeting to order at 6:40. We will start with Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Here.
Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
I'm here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Sutton here. Mr. Wishbarth?
Present.
Ms. Richards?
Here. Are there any agenda additions this evening? No. Okay.
Did we have
Bill?
one that wasn't on there? One under other wasn't on there, but it was in the pack.
Well, there's two different, I guess I would point that out, that if you downloaded the agenda by itself, it's different than the agenda that's in the packet. So, just saying that.
Oh, so that's already
Yeah,
good.
so, but it should be fine, because there is the other in there.
All right.
But Bill, you had something?
Yeah, I just wondered if the board wanted me to give a subcommittee report on the RAB meeting that happened a week ago.
Sure, we can add that to number 3,
Okay.
RAB update.
Good idea.
And I would like to give a subcommittee update on the website. The township website.
Okay.
It'll be short. Not hear you at all, I heard.
Can't hear you at all.
Me?
Any of you.
Any of us.
Hear me now?
I mean,
Microphones
I don't-
aren't working?
Do the microphones actually go out to the audience, or is it
Yes.
just for
Nope, they're there.
TV?
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear Jamie through the speaker?
I'm trying, guys.
Can you hear me over the speaker? No?
Speak up.
Okay. Okay, so we added number 3, RAB update, and number 4, website, under subcommittee reports and updates. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve that agenda with those changes?
Make a motion to approve those changes as presented.
Support by Cummings.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Cummings with those 2 agenda additions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried.
And what was number 4 again?
Number 4 was website update. Moving on to the first of 2 public comment sections on the agenda. The first public comment section is reserved for agenda items only, and you must submit a comment card. Are there any comment cards for the first public comment?
I have none.
Okay. All right, again, we do have a second public comment. At that time, you do not need to fill out a card, and it does not need to be an agenda topic, and that's at the end of the meeting. All right, moving on then to the consent agenda. First on is the regular meeting minutes from January 23rd. I believe on Sunday, Josh, you emailed up some updated ones.
Yes.
Okay. The only thing I had on there is under PFAS discussion. It said Mr. Sutton supported a motion by Mr. Westerbarth to postpone discussion, but we didn't. We did
Nope.
postpone it a few times, but we
yeah.
did not postpone it that time.
I saw that one.
So.
I don't know if that was a new change.
So just strike through the to postpone discussion. Otherwise, I didn't have anything else.
Along with that one, Josh, under my board comments, we have RFPs going out for lake management, should be management after lake, and then after control services.
All right.
Okay, anything else under January 23rd? All right, then special meeting minutes from February 17th. It was not in attendance, so I have no comment.
I had a comment for Mr. Sutton, and he made a correction and emailed those out,
I did see that.
so that it's different than what's in the packet.
Right.
So
Do you have the correct amount, just so the public knows?
it's 13 for the water and sewer indirect connections is $13,872. and the 470163 is the cost of a 4-inch meter.
Okay, so you making those changes, because as Bill indicated, he emailed that up earlier.
Yep.
All right, moving on then to finance, we have payment of bills. First on is the prepaid from February 21st for $1,448.78. Any questions or comments on that? And we have prepaid February 24th, $87,518. Any questions or comments on that run? And we have a check run from February 28th, $40,796.43. Any questions or comments on that? And then the checking report was D. Anything there? Okay, with that, with those couple of changes, does somebody want to make a motion in regard to the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the updates.
Support?
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton, to approve the consent agenda with those couple corrections. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Then moving on to subcommittee reports and project updates. First, we have the February 2023 engineering report. Rick is here.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello?
Can you direct the microphone to?
Okay, under current projects, the water main projects are still pretty much on hold, obviously, due to the winter months that have finally arrived, and the fact that we're still waiting on delivery of meters for last year's projects, along with obviously the ones that'll be coming later this year. Latest indication, I believe, is that we heard May as far as the meters and the meter pits for phase 3 and 5, which is under construction right now. So that date continues to slip a little bit. So hopefully we can get them sooner than that. We have asked the supplier as they get them to ship them out, instead of maybe waiting for the entire 150 allotment for the last year's projects. They really didn't commit to that, but they said they would try to work with us. So phase 4, we did close that out with Eagle, the DWRF from 2021. I believe all that paperwork has come in.
I haven't got it.
You haven't received that? Okay, there'll be some final paperwork for signatures that'll come in once Eagle goes through their process on their end. Like I said, phase 3 and phase 5 were pretty much on hold until those meters come in and meter pits. Have not made a recent C2R2 reimbursement request. There might be one in March. Elmer's did get the boring under the railroad completed back last month, so we'll be looking at possibly submitting one of those in March, just to keep that process rolling. Phase 6, the coal bath area, as I said, that's part of the 300 meter pits and meters that you approved at the last couple of board meetings, and we're hearing October or November delivery on those. The plans for those are getting pretty close to being wrapped up, and we will do some strategy on when will be the best time to put that out for advertising and bidding. Contractor would be able to obviously get the main line in, but again, he would be waiting until those meter pits come in the fall. So we'll strategize on that as far as when we want to advertise and bid that. And that's also the same with the remaining township-wide service line project. Probably will be putting that out at the same time as that coal bath. Right now, tentatively, maybe advertising it in May and awarding it in June. But like I said, we'll look at that as far as availability of material. Sanitary sewer pump station project, we are going down through the punch list on that, quickly wrapping that up, coordinating activities between the contractor, and F&B operations in Row to make sure all the bells and whistles are working properly. And like I said, hopefully wrapping that up here in the next couple of months. And then we'll be balancing out the remainder of that project. We do have a request I made a request to Eagle and Lansing on the odor control. They said as long as the Bay District Office would approve it, and then depending on the money we have left over, that could be a change order for this project to do that. We did at the Joint Expo beginning of this month. One of the vendors there does have a new method of odor control that appears to be more effective than the carbon filters. So Row is looking into that, and the cost is significantly less also. So once we have some more information on that, and as I said, Eagle approves us to include it in this project, maybe we can get that tacked on at the end to help out with that odor out in and around Pump Station 4 and 25. Phase 3 trail project, contractor is moving. I just talked to Row's inspector this afternoon at their office. The stump removal is nearly complete, which will fulfill the requirement of the April 30th deadline for fisheries and wildlife on the EMR mitigation. Weather doesn't seem to be slowing him down too much, and then he'll move into the excavation, or the base excavation of the trail shortly after that. And his tentative schedule to start actually rebuilding the trail will start probably around mid to end of April. So if he gets back to that schedule, then we're in good shape for wrapping that project up by the end of November. Other than that, I did have a discussion with the architect, WTA, Jason Goff, on the facilities improvement and coordination plan. And we are looking at, based on the existing information and his evaluation of the utilities and the plans that they are now in receipt of, that we be looking at possibly a meeting with the township to go over progress sometime in March, and I'll be working with Nicole on a schedule for that at one of her upcoming planning and zoning meetings. The Mission Street slip lining project, that bid contract documents is to the Air Force for review. As soon as we get that back from them and the agreement in place, we can advertise that project and get that out on the street. Working with Old Orchard personnel, have a meeting with them tomorrow on the fishing pier deterioration and some other future projects out there. You previously approved going forward with the ORV crossing at River Road. As soon as that letter gets to ICRC and the county, we can start working with them and getting those plans out there and approved by them, and also Fisheries and Wildlife and Forestry on that, so that crossing could be installed sometime yet this year, probably mid to late summer, going through the process. Funding, I gave a summary in there. Unfortunately, we were not successful on the Spark grant application that we submitted before Christmas. 21 projects were funded, most of them south of M46, southern part of the state. There are 2 more rounds of that funding yet this year. I don't believe that they've come out with the dates for those applications yet. And we'll also be looking from them for information on where we could do better on our application, or if it was just strictly they ran out of money for northern Michigan. I don't know. So we also submitted back at the beginning of February on a Consumers Energy Planet grant. We were also declined on that. That was for some improvements out at Sunrise Park. Again, we'll be looking for a debrief on that and seeing what we can do around. They again had a lot of projects submitted. I didn't get a didn't get a summary as to where the projects were funded or which types of projects were, but we'll be looking on that. I'll be stopping by the Holiday Inn site tomorrow to get an update there. And with that, that's my report.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Rick, just a couple of questions. On the phase 3 and 5 of the water main extension, did I hear you say that everything is complete, we're just waiting on the meters?
Well, no,
Is there still work to be done?
there's still work. Caterman, phase 3, that main line is pretty much all in. They will just have the valves, some hydrants, and water services to connect on their portion of the project.
Okay.
Elmer's does have a line to install, and I'm probably not going to get this right, I think on Elk Lane yet. So they've got some main line to get installed yet. So they did their boring of the railroad back in January. They will probably start putting in the rest of their main as soon as weather gets a little bit more cooperative. And then, like I said, with that, then the water services and that, as far as the remainder of those, the majority of the connections or service connections need to be made, will be made as soon as we start getting supplies in.
So do we have to have the meter pits in before we can make the connections to the house?
Yes, we do.
Or we can run the lines to the house and then put the meter pit, or you can't do it that way?
It's better to have the meter pit and doing it all there, because that way we connect the curb stop to the meter pit and all of that. And then based on that location, which we work out with the property owner, as far as the most direct line from that point to their house.
Okay.
And then we've got to also coordinate the actual well abandonment at that time too. So it's more advantageous to do all of that at once.
Okay, and then one other question on the sanitary sewer system improvements. I noticed in a report from F&V a couple of months ago in their projects and the list of things that they accomplished during the month and the money that's spent. Some of those were to correct deficiencies and problems and things that the contractor had done. Is there any relation in there for us to get compensated or something?
Yeah, we're working with Catherine and them that's part of that punch list items.
Okay.
As far as some of the work that they had to do to make things work on the weekends and stuff when
Right.
the contractor's personnel left and all that stuff. So that'll be all part of the balancing change order at the end to make sure that the township is reimbursed for any expenses that they did over and above
Okay.
the normal coordination.
Because when I went through F&V's report, it was a couple of months ago,
Yes.
and there were a number of items in there that they had to take on to correct, that they were a fault of the contractor in one form or another.
Yeah, Mr. Kuhn at RCL is well aware of his list of things that he has to own up to.
If I remember correctly, most of them were with RCL's subcontractors.
Yeah, and that's what it was, is the subcontractors would be on site, supposed to be coordinating with Catherine's staff and Mark's staff at F&V before they left on a Thursday afternoon or a Friday. Well, they would just take off and nobody would know exactly what was done and how to adjust things if they needed to be. So we had to work through some of those issues near the end. Yeah, the subcontractors bailed early for long weekends, more often than not. So.
Yeah. And just to comment on the trail project, Phase 3 trail project, I know personally I was looking for them to be out working, November 1st when the Fish and Wildlife gave us permission to be in there working, and nothing was done until much later. But having gone out there several times and looking at the path, anybody that hasn't been out there, you should really go out there and take a look. It's really going to be a nice scenic pathway out through River Road there out to the Old Orchard Park, and it appeared to me that I've been out there several times the last couple of weeks. They're making really good progress on everything there, so.
Yeah, they finally came around and got things moving. They had some equipment issues and all that stuff. I kept putting them on notice as far as the April 30th deadline.
Yeah.
And I think they finally realized that they shouldn't put off things too much longer, so they got out there and got things moving, so.
Yeah, it seemed like they weren't taking advantage of the mild winter we were having up until now.
Apparently,
So-
yeah, apparently they like working in snow.
Yeah, maybe. All right, thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Rick, I do have a question. It's back up on the proposed Holiday Inn Express
Yes.
and item number 2. So the discussion, I guess, is there something already installed? As opposed to like this comment about needing at least a 6-inch water main?
No, that's still out there pending. As far as their original site plan location down at
Okay.
Michigan and the park, down in that location. And then we did some investigation the end of summer, early fall, and found out that an adequately sized main is up at Lake in Michigan. So we're still need to work with them as far as them moving their connection up to that point, or what options we have for making the connection down at Michigan and Michigan and the park.
Right, okay, good.
So-
I thought.
I've had a couple of calls into them, and they have not responded yet, so that must not be high on their priority list yet, so.
You'd think it would be, but
Well,
maybe because it's frozen right now. But,
Right.
I thought there was a main already installed, and that's why I was wondering what we were talking about here, but I thought they already had water, it was maybe
No.
just a plan.
plan.
Yeah, no, it's-
We're trying to figure out the connection location.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mhm.
And I just, one other quick question, Rick, if you don't mind, while you're in the hot seat there. In the Mission Street slip lining
Yes,
plan, I noticed in our, one of our action items for Rose invoices to pay, part of one of those is for some of the engineering for the slip lining. Are we keeping track of whatever monies the township is paying, and will be reimbursed by the Air Force for those costs?
yes, we received a separate proposal from Rowe that captured the costs for the design, putting the contract books together, and then also providing as-needed inspection services. And that information has been shared with the Air Force as far as their review and incorporating it into the agreement that we're waiting on.
So that we're paying this invoice tonight, I'm assuming we're going to approve paying that. And then those will be kept track of, and then the Air Force will reimburse us for those costs?
That is correct.
Okay.
Excellent.
And Rick, I want to thank you for keeping the odor control front and center.
Yes.
A lot of residents out there are deeply concerned about that.
Yeah. The row staff started giving me the technical side of what they were looking at, and I said, just, when you get it all packaged up, send it my way, and I'll have the appropriate people take a look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is super important. We've been kind of promising that for a while.
Understood.
But, okay, so thank you very much. Next on is the FVOP PFAS investigation update. Catherine?
Elaine and I prepared a memo that's in your board packet in regard to the current status of the sanitary sewer PFAS investigation. Kind of laid out what had been done, to date as far as the timeline in regard to Eagle's requirements, and then the most recent actions which have to do with the sewer line at Hangar 7, the previous Hangar 7. So at this point in time, we have accomplished, at least temporarily, isolating that line from the sewer main that was shut off by the airport authority staff, or was it the defense contractor? I can't remember who exactly was the airport authority staff. Okay, and then we also installed a sewer plug into that interceptor where it comes into a manhole, so that sort of a
belt and braces approach. You know, the valve was closed, and then we also plugged off the sewer. We had intended to do some sampling last week, which is actually going to be accomplished this week, not because of staff problems, but because of shipping issues. We didn't want to have samples get stranded somewhere in FedEx during the storm, because if they're not received by the lab in a timely fashion, then they become invalid. So we didn't want to have to, you know, repeat that exercise. So those samples that will be collected in that area will be done this week, and then those results will be available before the end of March. The last full report to Eagle was done in December. That report was submitted to the supervisor and the superintendent for their review before it was submitted to Eagle. And then we have not heard anything from Eagle since the time of that report. So we are waiting now to hear from Eagle any feedback in regard to the steps that have been taken, which included isolating the sewer line from Hangar 7, and to see what their next step requirements will be.
Okay. Any
So-
questions?
So, in your testing the influent and effluent, I remember in your previous report, you had, I don't recall the exact numbers for the PFAS. Are they the same for the influent and effluent?
No, they are not. And so what has happened, and they've seen this now over the course of the several years that not just Oscoda Township, but other wastewater facilities have been investigating sources of PFAS, is that actually when the material passes through the wastewater treatment plant, there is some changes that take place. And so all of you, lived with the PFAS issue for a long time, and you understand that a lot of these are long chain molecules.
Right.
And what they think is happening is that as it goes through the treatment process, some of those chains are breaking, and so the PFAS is changing what type of PFAS it is. So that, the total cumulative amount may be the same, but it's changing from potentially other forms into like PFAS or other shorter molecules because of whatever action is taking place, either biological or mechanical or chemical, throughout the course of the treatment process. So it's not identical going in and going out.
So generally speaking, just in general, the effluent would have a lower rate than the influent coming
No.
in would be higher?
No, not on certain types of it. So that is part of what is happening, like I said, statewide, as far as Eagle's analysis of how this is being affected in the wastewater treatment process at multiple different locations. And so sometimes it's changing to different types of PFAS. Some of it is actually becoming settled out in the solids in the treatment plant, but they haven't really gone through what they would call like a mass balance on exactly where it ends up as far as the fate and transport of it as part of the treatment process. And the lagoon system that you have is a little unique compared to a lot of other treatment facilities in the state. So we don't know how much of that is now accumulating in the biosolids that are settled out in the lagoon process, to be able to identify that.
So basically what we're trying to achieve with this inspection process is to lower the level of PFAS in the influent that's coming into
Yes.
the lagoon system.
Yes.
And you haven't had any tests yet since the hangar has been?
Yeah, we have had, that was done in December, so we had a set of analyses done in January, which I don't have those numbers with me or a comparison of that. And then we will also be doing the influent and effluent sampling this week, along with the sampling around the Hangar 7 area. So we'll have more data for you when we do our update next month.
Okay. And we would hope that the influent results at the lagoon system would be much lower once you've eliminated that Hangar 7.
Yep, that's what we're hoping for. We will find out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You said that the molecules are breaking down in the system?
Well, they are breaking into different pieces. So
What's causing that? I mean, there has to be an energy transfer for some sort for that?
Well, like I said, there's mechanical, there's biological, and there's chemical action in that treatment process.
So is there a possibility that the biological and chemical and process for the sewage treatment is actually breaking the chemical down to something that's not quite as toxic?
Well, all PFAS are toxic, so it doesn't...
But that doesn't answer my question. Is it possible that it's breaking down to a molecule that is not going to harm anything?
I could not answer that. I have
But
no...
the molecules are being shown to be broken down. We just don't know from what.
Well, like I said, they're being broken down from larger PFASs into smaller PFASs.
But you can still trace the signature back.
Yes, you can still trace
Yeah,
the
so you're
signature
going to
back.
find the original compound. Eventually, depending on the testing, you can do that. So, but anyway, Catherine and Tammy, I appreciate the documentation because this is exactly what my intent was when I brought it to the board. We just need to document this as a township, what we're
Yeah.
doing. So going forward, we know how to get the cleanup. And
Yeah.
we've got
So
that.
all the results are, being submitted to the state, and the state's next deadline will be the end of March to do another interim status report for Eagle, which will be shared with, the township administration at that time.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thanks, guys. Great, moving on then to the RAB update. Bill?
Yeah, I'll do this real quickly. On February 14th, the day before the RAB meeting, the Air Force, along with the RAB, put together a field trip. They took a bunch of us, 9 o'clock, we met at the FTO2 treatment center, and we trounced around out in the snow and the ice in the woods there, behind the wastewater treatment plant and behind the sediment ponds, which are very large, by the way. I was not aware that they were, from what I'd seen before, I didn't realize they were the size of several football fields. But anyway, we tromped around out there. We actually found some of the seep points, and what those are where the groundwater actually comes to the surface from the sediment beds, and you have a stream of water that never freezes because it's groundwater that's coming up from the sediment beds. That was pretty interesting to find several of those. And what was discussed at that meeting was that the Air Force is going to take the wastewater treatment plant as a high priority and look into investigating what needs to be done with that. So that will be one of their projects that the Air Force will be working on, and they're going to make that a top priority moving forward here. Then at 1:30 that day, there was a meeting in the library with the Air Force and their experts and some of the now experts to discuss technical issues and some of the remedial actions that the township or the Air Force has taken and is taking. We know that the C2S2 plant is complete and operating. That's the central treatment plant, and the secondary treatment plant that they put in with the additional extraction wells along F41. That is up and running, and the entire plant is pumping approximately 1.4 million gallons of and treating that water a day. So there's a lot of water going through the central plant. Also, the FTO2 expansion project is complete and operating. That's where they added 6 additional extraction wells for treatment and put in additional GAC facilities there to handle that process. And they also talked about, at the RAB meeting, the VI, the vapor intrusion investigation that they're going to be starting. They started that several years ago on the base, and now a new company has been contracted, and they've just come on the scene, and they give quite a long presentation about what vapor intrusion is, how they detect it, what all is involved with that. And the next remedial action, what you have to understand is that the Air Force has been doing a remedial investigation on the base for the past 13 years. They are now beginning some remedial actions, which are things that they do to actually clean up some of the contamination. The next one that they're going to do is a pump and treat plant for the aircraft alert area on the base. That's where they used to station the jets to be ready to take off. They found high concentrations of PFAS in some of that area. What the NOW group has suggested to the Air Force, and the Air Force is taking this into consideration, is that there's also a concern about the DRMO site and the landfill 3031, which are toward the north end of the base. There's high concentrations of PFAS that are flowing into Van Etten Lake at about the YMCA camp. They've detected a clear plume that flows directly to that camp and actually to the beach. So there's a good deal of foam that is attributed there at that facility, the Nisakoni YMCA camp. We've suggested, the NOW group has suggested, and they're technical experts, that this new plant that they're going to put in for the aircraft alert area, that they extend the lines up to include wells, which are already there, by the way, to connect a pump for those DRMO and the landfill 3031 sites. So that's basically what was presented at the last board meeting. I, as the alternate to Mr. Cummings, sat in for the meeting. Tim was sick that evening, so it was quite a lengthy discussion. And my personal feeling, this is just my personal feeling, is that there's been some changes at the top of the Air Force and the Air Force officials in the recent months, and it seems as though there's a little more cooperation between the Air Force and the community, and a little quicker action. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that they will take some of the suggestions and move along a little quicker. I think 13 years of investigating a site is more than sufficient to find out what needs to be done to clean up the mess that's left here. So I'm somewhat encouraged by the steps the Air Force is taking, but like I said, they've still got a long way to go and a lot of things that need to be done. So that's it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Bill. All right, then we have the website update.
Yes, and just be sure that finally got the training that was needed to be able to go in and look and modify the website. There's one thing that is particularly concerning, is that the running footer that is across the bottom of every one of the web pages has some strange characters in it. I don't know how long they've been there. I never noticed them originally, but the website developer is going to have to address this. It's not within the scope that they gave me in my editing permission to go and fix regular content. So they're going to have to go and fix this. And sadly, this email back and forth with them has been going on for a bit, so I'm not thrilled with the speed of resolution, but they do indicate that they're able to fix it. I just don't know what's holding them up. But in any case, I will get to the to-do list that we discussed probably over a month ago now, finally, now that I have the access. So I'll give another update. Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the superintendent's report. First on is the row engineering invoices.
Okay, the packet contains the following list of invoices for road engineering for services rendered. These invoices require caption warrant.
All right, the first one is invoice number 107041 for the Iosco Exploration Trail. The amount on that is $11,490. Were there any comments or questions that, or a motion to pay?
I'll make a motion to approve paying row invoice number 107041 in the amount of $11,790 to be paid from Fund 101-751 880.572 for the IET Phase 3 project.
Support Worcester Barth.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Westerbarth to approve that invoice 107041. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next on is invoice number 107112 for as-needed services. The amount on that is $3,921.25. Any questions or comments on that? Or is there a motion to approve?
I would make a motion to approve the payment for the as-needed services in the amount of $3,921.25 to be paid from 101-299-801-000.
Is there support?
Support Spencer.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton and support by Mr. Spencer to approve invoice 107112. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is invoice 107113 for the wastewater pump station improvements. The amount on that is $11,051.05. Any discussion or comments on that, or a motion to approve?
I'll make-
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve invoice number 107113 for the wastewater pump station improvements, $11,051.05 to come from the CWSRF after the reimbursement is available.
And support?
Support Cummings.
Okay, there's a motion by Mrs. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings for invoice 107113. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is invoice 107115 for Phase 5 water system improvements. That amount is $3,255. Any questions or comments, or a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve invoice number 107115 for Phase 5 water system improvements in the amount of $3,255 to be paid from C2R2 after reimbursement is available.
Okay, is there support?
Support Palmer.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Palmer to approve invoice 107115. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Last is invoice 107118 for Phase 3 water system improvements. That is a whopping $387.50.
Denied.
Any comments or questions on that? All right, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve road professional invoice number 107,118 in the amount of $387.50 to be paid from C2R2 funding once available.
Okay, is there support?
Support Sutton.
A motion by Mr. Spencer and support by Mr. Sutton for invoice 107118. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, next on is the Old Orchard Park 2023 operations plan. Amy?
All right, your packet contains a memo dated February 22nd, 2023, from the Township's Park and Recreation Director regarding the 2023 operations plans for both Old Orchard Park and Footsite Park, which is also the next item on this agenda. The 2023 operations plan for Old Orchard Park is required due to the Township's lease with Consumers Energy. Approval of the 2023 Old Orchard Park operations plan requires Township Board approval.
Okay, they're pretty similar from year to year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought. All right, any questions or comments on that, or action to approve?
Just one question. Do you know, is the fee schedule that's in there, is that increased from last year? Do you know?
No, they are not.
Okay.
The increases were done last year, and I believe there will be another increase set for the following year, which is 2024.
Okay, is there any kind of a set policy that rates would be increased every other year or something at a, I mean, due to inflation, everything's going up.
Right?
No, we don't have at this time a current set
Okay.
policy for that.
Okay, all right, that was all. It's very similar to what we had last year.
Right.
I'd make a motion to.
I have a question, Bill, before you
Oh,
do.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Couple questions.
So I wanted to know about the staffing, and I wanted to know, is this more or different than we had last year?
It's the same, usually the same.
The 3 and
That hasn't
45?
wavered, yeah. 3 full-time and 45 seasonal.
And has the pay schedule changed since we last spoke of this some months ago? Gosh, maybe 10 months ago or so? Are we still, what is the part-time and seasonal folks?
That will be to be determined by the Parks and Recreation Director.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve?
Tammy, just a question, because we have, we're trying to get a connector to the park to get to the trails. And 2 meetings ago, I think it was. But we have, I know right now, there's no ATVs allowed to be driven in the park. Kind of agree with that, but we should have a place in the park where they can be unloaded and go up and back to the trail and stay, not on the trailer. So I'd like Al to take a look at that and come back to.
We're working on that.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
All right. Okay, are we ready for a motion then?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 Old Orchard Park Operations Plan as presented.
Support, Sutton.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Palmer and support by Mr. Sutton to approve the Old Orchard Park 2023 operations plan as submitted. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the foot site operations plan.
Okay, very similar to the previous agenda item concerning Old Orchard Park, a 2023 operations plan is also requested for Footsite Park. Your packet contains the proposed 2023 operations plan for Footsite Park. Board members will note that Old Orchard Park staff will be performing the ongoing maintenance for both the grounds and the bathrooms. The 2023 Footsite Park operations plan requires Township Board approval.
Excuse me, sorry. Is there any questions or comments on that plan? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2023 operations plan for Footsite Park.
And is there support?
Support, Sutton.
There's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton to approve the Footsite 2023 operations plan as submitted. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the Iosco County Road Commission invoice for the Iosco Exploration Trail Project.
Okay, the township, through the Road Commission, received a TAP grant for roughly $2 million for the Iosco Exploration Trail Project. This grant requires an 80-20 split, with 20% being a local match. The township has currently received its commitment from the county in the amount of $50,000 and funds from Consumer Energy in the amount of $25,000. Your packet contains an invoice from the Road Commission for the township's local match portion in the amount of $10,622.15 for the services provided so far in this project. I would ask that the board approve the payment in the amount of $10,622.15 as the township's local match towards the Iosco Exploration Trail to be paid to the Iosco County Road Commission from Fund 101-751-880.572.
Are there any questions on this invoice?
Is that the general fund? I don't know the numbers well enough.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Okay, it just said general fund at the top. I just wanted to make sure that was our general fund and not theirs.
All right. No questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve paying the Iosco County Road Commission $10,660.15 as the township's local match for the TAP grant for Phase 3 of the Iasco Exploration Trail. Funds to be taken from Fund 101-751-880.572.
Support.
Cummings?
There's a motion by Mr. Palmer and support by Mr. Cummings to approve as submitted. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wushtaba?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the Oscoda Pump Station Replacement Pay Application Number 14.
All right, your packet contains the 14th pay request in the pump station replacement project in the amount of $1,462.50, leaving a total of $181,525.96 remaining on this project. I would ask that the board consider approving the 14th pay request from RCL Construction in the amount of $1,462.50 to be paid from the CWSRF checking after reimbursement is requested and deposited into the township's account.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? Right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve pay request number 14 from RCL Construction in the amount of $1,462.50 for pump station project to be paid from CWSRF checking once funds are available in our account.
Okay, is there support?
Support. Sutton?
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Sutton to approve pay application number 14. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wushtaba?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Then number 6 is pump station fee revision.
All right. Contains a request from Monroe Engineering for the Township Board to approve the movement of funds in the current CWSRF budget from the design phase of the project to the construction phase. Due to issues that came up during the project and some other unforeseen conditions, $25,000 in additional funding is needed and requires Township Board approval to adjust these funds and complete and close out the project. Mr. Freeman is available if further information is required.
Okay, do we have any questions for Rick?
25K? For what?
It's a movement, so when the project was originally set up back in 2020, March of 2020, when the proposals were submitted, Eagle set up the budget. They set up a budget, a line item budget for all the different phases of the project. So it's design engineering, construction engineering, the bond council, all those fees are set up in there. And what has happened is that the design that Roe did came in under budget, so there's money left on the budget line item for design. The construction budget is now going to be exceeded because of the unknown grinder pump station that had to be installed there by pump station 7 for that property and cabins that we talked about, I think, at one of the last meetings. There was that. There was some additional issues out at pump station 8 for the controls that they had to dig into. So there was additional time and energy spent during construction. No increase to the project costs, overall project costs. They're just requesting, Eagle needs to have the board approve the request to move budget from design to construction to balance that out. That's
So
what
the
this
design
request.
the design guys were exactly $25,000 under budget.
Well,
and the building guys
they were actually a little bit more than that, but all the construction needs is 25.
on the money, to the penny.
I think it's over about $46,188.50 actually.
It's time and materials, so if they don't use it all, it's going to be left in there. And then basically what that means is the township's $6.7 million CWSRF loan, if the township doesn't use all of that, your loan payments obviously are, your loan amount's going to be less and all that stuff. It's just part of the closeout process. Very similar to what we're doing on the construction side with RCL right now. to find out how much money's left there for the odor control. So,
All right, so the budget was set, the budget is being adhered to, but,
Yes.
but these guys were cheaper and these guys are more expensive, so we're just gonna,
yeah.
okay.
And because it's all in CW, SRF, we don't need a budget amendment because it's all within that fund. We're just moving
Correct,
on.
it's just, Eagle needs your approval to move the money from one line item to another.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the movement of $25,000 from the design phase to the construction phase of the CW SRF budget.
Support.
There's a motion by Mr. Westerbarth, support by Mr. Cummings to approve the transfer of funds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Westerbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, and I believe the reason why Nicole is here this evening. Let her move over.
Yes, we had a reading last meeting, didn't we? Yes, we did.
So first on is ordinance 2011-244, or the amendment thereof.
Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was here 2 weeks ago with these amendments. The only additional information I want to let you know is I did put the notice in the newspaper, and the changes were available outside of the clerk's office for the public to review.
Okay, all right. Is there any discussion on the ordinance? Or is there a motion? Let me find that email from you, sorry. Thought I clicked on it. So you're asking for us to adopt that ordinance this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure that I read that correctly.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2011-244 revision as presented.
Support, Spencer.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Palmer and support by Mr. Spencer to approve ordinance 2011-244, the amendment to it, I should say. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Westerbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the zoning ordinance 165, a definition addition.
So this is adding the full bathroom definition to the ordinance. This was also in the public notice and posted outside of the clerk's office.
All right. Any questions or comments? And again, you need us to just adopt
Yes.
the zoning ordinance 165 definition?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve adding the definition of a full bathroom to the 165 ordinance as presented.
Is there support?
Support. Sutton?
There's a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Sutton, to adopt, or to add that definition. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Westerbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for, I mean, obviously, it takes a lot of time to have the discussion at the planning commission, to post them in the paper and everything else. We're just tasked with the simple part. You had all the other tough parts, so we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the other section on our agenda, we have a forensic audit request. Mr. Sutton, I believe that is your agenda item.
And so I had sent out a memo to the board just highlighting some issues I had found in working with the tax assessor and attorneys, and kind of some questions on actual process we have. And I did you guys receive all the emails from Jamie and myself?
There were quite a few, so it was hard to kind of dive through everything, but I know I tried my best.
Yeah, so our biggest thing was just looking at Chapter 5, cash disbursement procedures. And I had a question, and basically just what I was questioning in the memo was just that in looking into those, there's no documentation attached. And I see that in Chapter 5, it says documentation for supporting invoices is required. And then we also did not have check runs presented to the board, which in Chapter 5 for cash disbursements requires that as well. That way the funds are dispensed with the board knowledge. And then, where are these? And then just signatory of checks does allow for the treasurer to sign those on her own, but our checks are all printed with dual signatory. So I just had a question as to why we wouldn't have both offices signing that.
Okay.
And I just wanted to bring that with the stuff just for discussion, so we know what we're doing, why we're doing it. We're making sure we're adhering to the cash disbursement for Chapter 5.
All right, I guess I kind of read your email on Friday as not a question.
Well, those are things notified, which is why I'm
Okay.
asking for forensic.
Okay, I was going to say, please state what you're actually asking.
Yeah, and that was per the email I sent out from the auditor. We had discussed that. He said he could offer those services, but originally recommended just going through that we'd probably be better suited just for a forensic audit.
He never said that.
That's in the email that was presented to the board.
I did not get that email from
That was sent to you as well.
the auditor that we have right now.
Yep.
I don't have that email. And I actually have an email. Let me just back up a little. Can I ask why I wasn't included in the original questioning of the checks that you were concerned about?
I did send that over to you, and then
You
I
did
talked to,
not.
yep, that was forwarded because they needed parcel number.
Right, but you never said you were going to the attorney or you had questions, so why anything, or the dual signatures or anything like that. I said, thank you for the information. I explained what that situation was, and then you said fine, and that was the last I heard of it. So, but again, here we are with the ambushes at the meeting. I didn't get a chance to present my side for it to be in the board packet. However, I did get a chance to reach out to the attorney, which you referenced in here, and to the current auditor, which you are saying that I received the email, but I did not, saying that he wanted a forensic audit. Down here in the, and I will, not going to read the whole thing, but I'll be happy to give anybody the documentation that I received from the same auditor that he's referencing and from the attorney. I just want to highlight a few things. I have all the documentation for every check that I've ever written for the checking account, and I've written these types of checks out of this checking account for 20 years that I've been treasurer, and the treasurers before that, and the treasurers in this area don't take any checks out of the tax account to their board for approval, and they don't do any tax return, any refunds to their board, don't get approval for that either. So the highlights from Lisa, the attorney, I would just like to point out is that we suggested that Josh accept the auditor's suggested resolution, but had not received a confirmation that he was in agreement with the auditor's recommendation, which was that he was going to look at it, and when he does the audit, and take a good depth of the checks that he was concerned about, and try to get the backup information from me and get it resolved. And if there was a problem or it was a big mess, then obviously there would be extra fees and so forth on that. That's what they said. And she also said, to be clear, in this juncture, neither office or the township auditors are recommending a forensic audit. We do recommend accepting the auditor's plan for a more in-depth review of the tax distributions as a part of the normal audit process. And I am copying Josh on this email so we were all on the same page. And then the actual from Kevin, who is our current auditor, we just signed an agreement with them. We just went through the first year process with them last year. He noted the following. He said, the Department of Michigan Treasury requires tax collections to be deposited into a separate bank account in the name of the treasurer. Dual signatures are required for all checks except the separate tax collection account. Statutorily, the separate tax collection bank account only requires the signature of the treasurer. That is true. However, I do have dual signatures for checks and balances. That way, when we write the checks, when I do a refund, Jane initiates the refund. She creates a document that shows what parcel it's going to, the name and address, the copy of the taxes that part of it was paid for. Then she gives it to me to create the check and mail, checks and balances. I've done that for 20 years. The remittance of the property taxes to other units of government are not subject to board approval because the tax distributions are not claims against the government. Tim emailed me. He was the only person that reached out to me and asked me a question about it when I welcomed anybody to get a hold of me. He said, that doesn't cover like the refunds because it's not a taxing entity. Well, technically it is because it's still going into the tax account and it's paying part of their property tax. We have several different ways that somebody overpays or creates a refund. You have July border review, you have December border review, you have the PREs that used to be a part of the July border review and December border review, but now they can do those, the assessor can initiate those anytime. You also have just somebody mistakenly writes their check over for $10 and we need to refund that. So it still goes through the process of the actual going into the tax account, and then that overage gets keyed in by me, and then Jane creates the checks and balances, and we both sign it. And that's how that process has worked for more than 20 years. And he also noted nothing came to our attention during last year's audit that was not in compliance with the Treasury requirements. So I did reach out again to Julie Potts, the city of East Tawas, and she said that she would welcome any of the board members to call her also. My question to them was, do you provide a list of tax refund checks or any tax account checks to the Board of Trustees for approval? And she said, no, we don't. They are not expenditures, and technically, most of it is not our money. Again, I noted to the board that if you look up Public Act 206, which is the General Property Tax Act, there is nowhere in there that it says that it needs board approval. It repeatedly talks about the duties of the treasurer for the general tax collection and disbursement of money. I also included a letter from the county treasurer that noted the basic process for balancing with them. We literally have to account for every cent that we take in because we have at least 15 different entities that we collect money for, and approximately just over $10 million a year. And that's just in taxes. That doesn't include Old Orchard Park, any other revenue that we get through the township. It has to balance. And we do a process every month. I distribute 2 checks to all the entities, which a majority of those checks that are listed in this board packet are, that go to the different entities. And I have to subtract that from the amount of taxes that I collect. When we get our settlement report, when we have the tax roll that's created, it says this amount of money is going to be collected for, say, Oscoda schools. So I deduct that money each time that I distribute it till we get down to the last distribution, and it has to balance. So there's plenty of checks and balances out there. I'm going to say that I am super dismayed at the fact that I did not get to put this in here. I feel like since I provided information at a closed session not too long ago, that my integrity and my work ethic has been attacked constantly.
Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's not an attack. The question was actually to the lack of documentation in the system, which from the attorney that you did not read, as she said, Ford provided.
I have
There
it.
were checks to entries and persons that were not taxing entities, issued in October and November from the tax account that were unable to verify is being properly issued.
You didn't ask
Based
me.
upon the information we had, there was none in the system.
I don't put it in the system, it's
Why
in the
wouldn't you?
file. I have a tax file, because the only person that asked me for it is the auditors. That's why.
But that's where we
Why
put
didn't
all
you
the
come ask me for it?
documentation.
Not everybody puts
You
their
said
stuff in
this to
there.
me, Jeannie, and I simply highlighted it because those are the rules you're
You're
supposed
right,
to follow.
but I just gave
And
you the
that's
rules
all I'm asking.
also from the auditor and from the attorney.
Yeah, that's
Okay, the
the
ones
same
that
one
you
I
were
forwarded
referencing.
out when
Well-
he did not want to take it on. And he said he would, but the option was laid out for a forensic audit.
He did not say that.
Josh,
If you didn't read the
and
email,
are
it's
you-
in there.
I read the emails,
Yeah.
I didn't drill down, obviously, but I feel that you summarize things the way you want them to read. But that, again, is my thought.
I feel like
So-
you guys deflect, and I appreciate that, but I brought you facts tonight.
I brought you
And simply
facts.
asked, out of chapter 5, that you referenced one page,
Right, I
not the other
referenced-
two.
Okay, well,
'Cause it
all right,
says-
number one, we're starting
Well,
to have
I'm
a
just
little.
saying, it says.
You're starting to
however-
say you guys deflect, and I do not appreciate that.
I don't
Number
either.
one, you
Well,
put in a memo.
We can
You-
agree to
no,
disagree.
No, you let me finish my sentence.
You don't let anybody else do
Oh,
it.
yes, I do, sir.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Really? Without comments here at the board?
I'm sorry, what?
You've made comments all night here, Ann.
What does that mean?
Continue. I just presented this to the board, for the board to be aware, and the board to make a decision.
I have a question.
It's not an attack.
I heard the mention of the auditor. I went back and looked at the audit. This account's never been tested that I can find.
Yes, it
Is
has.
that
It
true?
gets tested all the time,
Let me
and
ask
I
you-
can give you the
just-
documentation.
Okay,
I went
let
back
Steve
through
ask
the
the
audits.
question. Thank you.
Sure.
And I can't find where this has been tested.
Where would you
Okay.
look for that, Steve?
Read the audit. I can find it. You can go look at the management comments. Go look within the audit in every account. I can't see where the tax account has been tested.
It's tested all the time. You know where it gets tested? Because it ties out to the penny.
Okay,
It has
here's
to
my
tie
other
out to the
question.
penny. Absolutely.
I see checks, up and back
I
from
can
the
tell you
tax
whatever
account
those
to
checks.
the, just stop, just let me have the
let
floor
him
for a
finish.
minute.
Sure.
From the tax account to Oscoda, I see some of that, but then I see checks being written. You talk about checks and balances here,
Yes.
okay? You have two people from your office signing these checks.
Yep.
You have checks that are going out for payments to people in the townships, and they're probably over tax payments. Okay, I'm gonna see some of that here. But there's no check from this board for this amount, these monies going. This check run is never seen in a board.
That's because.
I got an issue with that.
Well, here's the problem with that. The tax account was an agency account, which means that this board has no jurisdiction over it because it's not our money. I collect the money and I disperse the money to the entities. And several auditors have said that at different presentations. 2 years ago, GASB 84 changed it to a custodial account. It just changed the name. It didn't change the functionality of it. You do not, this board does not have any jurisdiction over the tax account.
Well, I guess I'd like to find out what jurisdiction we have legally.
You don't have
That's
any.
going to be a question from me to the attorney as a fiduciary responsibility of the township.
Absolutely.
Okay? So,
And I want to know why, Josh, because both the auditor and the attorney said that they did not request a forensic audit, that you worded it that way. Are you trying to insinuate something?
No, that was, he did not want to undertake that when we first asked him.
Who
Which
asked
is
him
why the attorney asked him if he was able to look into those. And that was the email I sent after the other one you sent, both from the attorney. There was one with the attorney and the auditor, or the attorney and the assessor, and one that you had sent out, which is you and the attorney. And that was just that long section.
Well, the word forensic audit, and I know that Steve asked for a forensic audit a couple years ago with Cindy from Stevenson and
Oh,
Grayson.
right here. This February
And she,
23rd. Which he put it as possible, we can perform some type of agreed upon procedure engagement. However, depending on the details, this may be better suited for a certified fraud examiner to look into. Our firm only performs financial audits, reviews, compilations, and agreed upon procedures.
That didn't say he wanted to do
I
one.
was going to say,
That was in the process. It was just something that was presented.
That's not what you said.
That was him stating he really didn't want to take that on.
That isn't what he said.
That's your interpretation, but
That's why we have 7 people in here.
really?
Yeah,
We have 7?
yep.
Thank you for pointing that out, Josh.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Your sarcasm too.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah, come back from vacation ready to go, thanks.
Yep. It's called mutual respect. And when you start giving me mutual respect,
Interesting,
yeah.
interesting.
With that, are you requesting a forensic audit, or are you asking the board what they
I'm
want to
asking
do?
the board what they want to do.
Because that's not how I read your,
The request comes to the board,
Request.
I can't make that decision. The board has presented the information, I would like a decision
That's not how
from
I
the
read.
board.
That's not how it was.
Based on everything they've had to go through, reading and everything else in here.
okay, so based on all that discussion, again, I believe that the subject heading of your document
audit.
is forensic audit request.
Yes.
Last time I checked, that would mean that you're requesting that to be
Yes.
done. Okay, so that's what I asked you, and you said, no, you're asking the board.
I'm asking the
So,
board for that decision, I'm
Okay.
requesting it.
okay, that's not what you just said. So, Mr. Sutton has presented something. Would you like to make a motion in regard to that?
I would make a motion that we go out for RFP to look at a forensic audit for the audit of the 2022 year.
Could we have a little more discussion on this before we
Sure, yep.
make a motion? I wanted to say that I've learned a lot in all of this that's come about. I didn't know that we could have just an account that just the treasurer's office could sign the checks. I was not aware of that, but under statute, that's allowed. But you're talking about what people are saying in the emails, and what our attorney pointed out was that there were checks issued that weren't verified.
Because nobody asked me.
Well, but
Nobody included me in the original investigation of the checks.
Under this chapter 5 that you sent out, where it indicates that statutorily the separate tax collection bank account only requires a signature of the treasurer. However, the treasurer must provide the clerk with summaries of tax receipts and copies of all checks written so the clerk can enter the information in the local unit's accounting system. It would seem to me if that report had been provided, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
That was before we automated with BS&A. So the language is a little bit old in there. I asked the same question. But we enter the tax payments. So he doesn't enter any of that stuff into it, and I don't want him entering that stuff into it.
But under these guidelines, it
I
indicates
understand
the
that.
treasurer must provide the clerk with summaries.
I will ask
And-
the auditor.
And then it goes on to say appropriate documentation supporting invoices must be attached to checks, copies for all disbursements for which an invoice cannot be obtained, and vouchers must be described, the payment to be made, indicate account number to be charged, so that all this can be provided for the clerk to store the records. So my thought was, in reading all this, if that report had been provided to the clerk by you, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I will ask the auditor on what their logic is about that.
What you were talking about, comments that the different people were making, and the auditor did say in one of his last things, because his question was, what is it the board's questioning that requires them to go to an attorney as opposed to the auditor? And then the attorney replied that there were several checks, and he said something to the effect that may require certified fraud investigator. That was his
Right.
language.
Yes.
He didn't say a forensic audit. He said required certified fraud examiner.
Which is the same thing as a forensic audit.
It's the same thing,
Yes,
sure.
absolutely.
But different words
Right,
that he
correct.
used. Now, our attorney and the assessor have recommended that we go with their proposal, that we simply provide our assessor with this information because...
Our auditor.
Or the auditor, I'm sorry.
That's
I keep
okay.
saying assessor, but
Yeah.
I mean the auditor, Because what was pointed out by the auditor was that looking back at previous audits, no tax disbursements were selected. In other words, the auditor didn't look at them last year.
Like I said, it wasn't
Tax
tested.
disbursements. So, I mean, because he didn't do it last year, I don't think means we need to have a special forensic auditor come in to do an audit this year. Let's allow our current auditor to take into account these tax disbursements. Now, I understand that the disbursement, there's a difference between disbursements and refund checks that are issued. Disbursements are simply sending money that isn't ours to the taxing entities that it's supposed to go to. On my tax bill, there's a line that says taxes for the school, taxes for the county, taxes for the library, all these things. Those are taxes that are collected by our treasurer that have to go to these different agencies. And I totally understand that has come out of a separate account. You certainly wouldn't mix that into your general fund with all the taxes that come in.
No, we don't want that.
Has to be in a separate account. She can write and sign the checks in her office. I understand that. But these other checks, and what the attorney has agreed, is that some of these checks that were written, there's no verification for. So if in the audit, our auditor can verify those verifications that those refund checks were issued correctly, I'm assuming they were, then problem solved. I don't think, and we can put it to a vote and the board can decide, I don't think it requires a special forensic or certified fraud examiner to come in and do this.
They're expensive.
Our audit's going to be starting here very soon, and both the recommendation from our attorney and the auditor is to follow their recommendation to just allow the auditor this year to look at these issues, and I'm assuming we'll get a report from them when the audit's
Yep.
done.
You sure
So
will.
that's
That's our findings that we have for the audit.
in reviewing all this and doing some research in the statutes and stuff, I learned something. It seemed like we learn something every day new that goes on in township and municipal law that is new. So that's how I read all this, and I think my 2 cents would be to let's allow the auditor to do what our attorney has recommended that they do, and they look into these, and I'm assuming we'll be fine. I don't think there's any but the reason you have to have these checks and balances is 2 reasons. You want to, prevent fraud, of course. You don't want somebody coming in, be able to write checks on their own and just send them out to whoever they want to send them out to. You can't have that. The second part for having checks and balances is to correct mistakes. We're all human here. Everybody makes mistakes. So by having checks and balances and departments working together to look at things, if a mistake is made, it can be caught and corrected before, a check is sent out that shouldn't have been sent out, or it's the right amount, or whatever it is. And so those are important. And, I was interested to see, the letter that you must have requested, Jamie, from the county
Yes, I did.
treasurer that
This morning.
came in just today.
Yep.
That says what a good relationship she has with you. It would be nice if you had the same relationship with the people within our township hall.
I would love that.
And
You're
I
right.
think if we can work towards that, we will be a lot better off than we are right now. But
I just want
that means
everybody to
coming
do their
together
job.
and working together on all these things. And I remember 2 previous superintendents have made mention that they can't track money that comes into the township. And Jamie, you've mentioned on several occasions, well, let me show you how to do that. You made that statement in a public meeting here not too long ago to Ms. Klein, that, well, I'll show you how to do that. As far as I know, that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So are you going to show her how to access that information or no?
Yeah, well, she's ready for
Okay.
me to, yeah.
Okay. So that's like I said, I learned a lot by studying and researching some of this, and I think if we can have our auditor look at these things when they come in to do the audit, we should get this cleared up. That's my 2 cents.
And do they give you documentation that can be attached to those?
I create the documentation that gets attached to the checks.
I mean, just like we do with all of our other,
When you scan it into the
Yeah.
system, that is correct. No, I
because
don't.
that's really what I was looking for, and that's what hailed the alarm, much like I would expect from you.
Again, you
I
could
had
have walked
them-
down the hallway and asked me for it, or included
In
me
that
in the
situation, I
questions.
didn't see any proof for what you were putting in there.
Well,
So I took it the
talk
direction
about
I would
working
expect
together
you
in
to
the
do if you
township
saw
hall.
it.
Okay, well, that's good to know for the next.
If I didn't have an
board
invoice in
comment.
there, you wouldn't approve it, Jamie. All three of us do purchase orders through accounts payable,
You're right, and I call you and I said, hey, or I deny it, and
and
I go.
there's an attachment,
yeah.
but I found all of your checks without them, and you said that's just how we do it. I'm just saying the rules say
That is not
that you should have attachments and documentation in there, and if that was there, I wouldn't even have an
I'll
issue.
start
That would have
scanning the
been,
backup information into the accounts payable for the tax checks. And then that'll cover the thing that Bill was talking about with giving you a list, because you can print the list out of the accounts payable system anytime you want to see what checks I'm writing.
right.
So, and if I attach the backup to it, you'll have all that information.
Yeah, that's all I'm
And that'll
looking
take
for,
care
that-
of that line in chapter 5.
Perfect.
Did you already start doing that?
I'll start doing that with my tax checks.
I mean, like, since this whole thing started and before tonight's meeting, did you start?
Have you had any
Provided-
I haven't,
for attachments or? any
Not
other
since
tax
Friday,
disbursements?
no. I just did one last week. I have to do 2 a month. So that last one, I can go back and scan the stuff to it. I mean, the tax entities, I really don't have to do that. If you want the refunds, I'll see if I can do it all if you would like. It's kind
Well,
of
just having
redundant
it
for
in
the
there
tax.
so it's in the system, so if we ever lose paper, that's why I have mine in there.
I
I know
don't
you
lose-
keep
I don't
paper
lose-
copies.
I don't
'cause-
lose my paper.
Yeah, you've got paper
I've
copies
been
for all
doing
your
this a
invoices
while.
that come to you, but everything goes in digital on my end.
Okay, so with that, you started to make a motion, are you still going to complete that motion or not?
With that, I would actually rescind my motion, and we can follow the advice of the attorney and our auditor for this upcoming season.
Okay, so no action needed.
No action needed.
Okay. All right, moving on then, we are finished with our.
Wait a minute. I would like to make a motion that we charge the auditor to go back through those accounts and test those for the last 4 years and get back to us, to the board with her.
4 years? We had an audit done before.
Jamie, they've never been tested. So that's my motion. It can be supported or not. That's what I would like. Got the auditor that's starting this year.
You're not charging
Should
that
be
to my
pretty-
account.
It'll be up to the board. Jamie.
Okay, so I'm sorry, your motion against Steve is what?
Have the auditor test these accounts for the last 4
Okay, let him
years
finish.
and send a report back to the board.
To be clear, these accounts, it's one account, right,
What-
Jimmy? or-
Well, it's the
Okay.
tax account.
So, which would mean, I mean, we obviously are just starting the audit of 2022. So you're saying going back, we haven't completed that yet, you're going back before that.
Correct.
So you're including
18.
2022, because we're already going to do that. 2021, 2020, and
2019.
2019. Okay. Is there support for that motion?
I'll support that motion.
There's a motion by Mr. Westerbar, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
No,
Mr. Westerbar?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
No. Motion passed. Okay, moving on to public comment. Again, we have 2 public comment sections on the agenda. This one, you do not need a comment card, and it does not need to be anything that we discussed this evening, but you are limited to the 4 minutes. So I'm going to start on the far right, my far right-hand side. Is there anybody in the right-hand side that would like to make a public comment this evening? Okay, all right. Middle section, if you'd like to make a public. Kathy, okay, Kathy first, come on down.
so they're running the clock.
Yeah, did we
Okay.
work out the clock thing? Are you guys running it, or? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Hi, Kathy.
And that is doing a public broadcasting project, I say, in Japan. So they were here that night, and then they'll be here again next month to do some more stories on military and PFAS exposure. So. And then, of course, we had the RAB meeting that was 3.5 hours long, and we had actually more community members show up to that, which we really appreciate because there were some really great comments, some very good input, a lot of questions, and that's really what we need from the community with that Restoration Advisory Board, is to get the community involved and on those plans. And as you know, I mentioned before, there's these 4 interim remedial actions that Bill has sort of mentioned. Those are the things that they can, the Air Force can put in place right now to capture those plumes that are flowing off of the base. That's what really the priority at this point for our community. And I've submitted a letter to the board for next week's, or excuse me, the next meeting's packet for a consideration for a letter of support or a resolution that would support those 4 IRAs, 2 of which the Air Force said they may consider, which, you know, we don't really take a whole lot from the Air Force. We don't believe it until they actually do it. So, but you might ask yourselves, why would the township want to do a resolution related to that? And I've asked our legislative team in DC the same question. Is it really important for a local entity or a county to support the actions of these sorts of things? And in fact, it is very, very important. You know, if you have, you know, when Congress looks at support, the state is supporting these actions that we've recommended. We have a letter of support for that. Or actually their letter to the Air Force. And then the county is considering it also. I'll be presenting to them on Wednesday. And then having a letter of support or resolution from you all would just really help Congress get that action put in place. So I just wanted to update you on that. The second request is to have you all consider putting some funds in the F&V budget for monthly PFAS testing of the municipal water supply. From my understanding, it would be about $600 a month to do this. That goes along with having that justification or having that documentation for your water supply. If you think about the entire system, you know, making sure that you have the documentation that water coming from the water supply to our homes is non-detect for PFAS is pretty important. And at this point, from my understanding, we're only doing it annually, and everybody knows that we have a serious source of PFAS going out into our environment. So having monthly testing at the cost of $600 a month, I think would be prudent for our township. So I am requesting that, along with other community members who've asked me to bring that to the board. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought I saw another hand back there. Okay, yep.
Just real quick, Sue Miller, Shoreline Players, that's why I'm here. And since we're all here in our beautiful house and broadcasting from here, I just wanted to remind everybody that we're opening a show this weekend, Everybody Loves Opal, which is a comedy, and it'll be this Saturday, March 4th, Sunday, March 5th, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And if you've ever wanted to get involved in a play, we have auditions coming up for a spine-chilling psychological thriller called Gaslight. Some of you may have heard of that one. Auditions for that will be this coming Monday, March 6th, and Thursday, March 9th, from 7 to 9 here in the theater. And we would love it if you come out and support the theater. And even if you don't want to audition, there's lots of other jobs to do. You can volunteer. So you can come out during the audition, or if you stop in at the play and want to volunteer, just find me or one of the other members and let us know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which she didn't come close to the 4 minutes, but you guys didn't start the clock on that one.
Oh, special treatment.
Special treatment, yeah, but I mean, I didn't realize it until she was, talking.
The cruise
Yeah.
clock exempt.
Yeah, right, I guess. Okay, so nobody else in the middle? All right, I'm gonna go with the far left. Raise your hand, Brenda. Okay.
Brenda Godfrey, Oscoda. At the January 23rd meeting, I spoke on some issues I felt needed attention. That meeting has over 1,200 views on YouTube, so I believe the community would like some answers as well. So now I am asking what has been done. Has anything changed? Has the chief addressed any of these issues with his officers? Has there been an internal investigation? I understand these officers still have to work with the chief and superintendent, so they might be a little hesitant on what they say due to the fear of retaliation, but these issues need to be addressed. Ms. Klein has stated her assistant's position description would be presented to the board for approval at the February 13th meeting. The custodian's position has not been filled yet either. Why are we still waiting on these? How long are we going to keep using a DPW employee to do the cleaning before we hire someone? Does DPW have that much free time that they can spare an employee? I recently went to the Township Hall and the library, and while I believe he tries, there is a lot being neglected. I spent Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings, 7 a.m., cleaning the library. Monday through Friday, 5 to 9 p.m., cleaning the Township and Police Department, only to change to 4 to 8 p.m., when the Township closed for the COVID outbreak because, well, 8 p.m. sounded better than 9 p.m. I worked days, I worked nights. I often thought about asking for a shift differential pay, but was always in fear my hours would be changed and not for the good. Good luck in filling that position. The superintendent released her evaluation only after she knew the results. Would it have been released if the results were different? She received near-perfect scores, but yet we have a lawyer investigating a toxic workplace. Superintendent, a person who is in charge of work done in a particular department, office, etc., or who is responsible for keeping a building or place in good condition. I find it hard to believe the superintendent and the EIC would put 100% into Oscoda Township when neither one of them live here. After the January 23rd meeting, a lot of people have reached out to me thanking me for coming forward. Nice article. Glad someone is stepping up. And my favorite one, bravo, lady. You said what many have wanted to. Proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, anybody else in the fire? I think that, Kevin, is that you? Sorry, I can't see that far back. Please come forward and remember to state your name when you get to the podium for Manuela.
My name is Kevin Kubik. I live in Oscoda, former sergeant of the Oscoda Township Police Department. I'm here tonight because I'm in the process of filling out an application for Oscoda Township, and I'd like to be able to fill that out truthfully and honestly. And I was wondering if anybody on this township board or Superintendent Tammy Klein could tell me when or at what point I was terminated from the Oscoda Township Volunteer Fire Department. No response? Does anybody know?
I would not, whether I don't have that information with me. You didn't-
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
mean-
I don't know.
Ms. Klein was the one that terminated me, I believe, from the fire department. I mean, does she know the answer to that? I'm just curious if it was on August 27th when I was terminated from the police department as sergeant as well, or not.
We can look into that question and get back to you, Kevin. I don't
Thank you,
have an
ma'am.
answer this evening.
Thank you. The other reason why I'm here is I'm here to ask for a cause of change at the township. At the last meeting, the board acknowledged that they were the ones that were responsible for hiring employees for Oscoda Township. But it's my understanding that Ms. Klein, as the superintendent, has the authority to terminate employees without the board's approval. So I don't understand why it takes the board to hire somebody, but Ms. Klein has the authority, the superintendent has the authority to terminate somebody. So, I mean, somebody that didn't graduate high school, then didn't go to college, that didn't take any aptitude tests to become a leader, was never interviewed to become the superintendent of the township, was appointed, and then 4 days later destroyed my entire law enforcement career. I don't believe that that is acceptable, or whatever. And maybe if this board was involved in terminating employees, maybe that would also save this township legal fees, lawsuit settlement fees, embarrassment for the township. I mean, there's just some examples that I think that could be, cause for change and make it better for everybody. And then favors wouldn't be being done to other people to satisfy other people and make them happy when other people's lives are being destroyed. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is back in 2018, I have a sign-up sheet here. These are all the officers that signed up for the patrol sergeant spot. Those officers were Tyler Leslie, Officer Soboleski, Officer Greg Alexander, and Officer Hart there in the back of the room, Officer Gallagher, and myself, Kevin Kubik. Now, we all had to take the sergeant exam. I know that Ms. Godfrey had brought that up in her previous statement. So, now as a result of that test, you had 6 books to study for that test. One was criminal investigations, one was police field operations, community policing partnership for problem solving, briefs of leadership cases in law enforcement, effective police supervisors, and the art of investigative interviewing. Now, the superintendent told the paper that the police officers told her the sergeant exam they were using didn't really relate to police work. So that test covers management and supervision, criminal investigation, police patrol, community policing, case law, rules of criminal procedure, criminal code, and traffic code, and contemporary criminal procedures as well. If your agency is one of many that needs an exam, the Stenard and Associates, NFLST, help law enforcement agencies identify promotional candidates who possess the relevant job knowledge to be successful supervisors and managers. The exam assesses candidates' knowledge in areas such as management, supervision, major court cases affecting law enforcement, community policing, criminal investigation, patrol tactics. Now, it's very insulting to me that these leaders that say this nationally used and known test that was designed by over 50 police chiefs to pick good supervisors to run their police departments was said that this test did not really relate to police work. A little bit of research would prove that that's not valid.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, anybody else in the last call on the far left? All right, that does wrap up our public comment section on the agenda. Now moving on to board comments this evening. I'm just going to turn to my right, down there. Tim, do you have any board comment this evening?
No, thank you.
All right. Mr. Spencer, anything this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sutton?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Palmer?
Just anybody that hasn't been out there lately on River Road to see where the Phase 3 bike path is going, I would encourage you to go out and take a look. It's going to be a beautiful path. It's going to be right along the river. It's close to the road. Most of it's in the road right away. It's, I think it's, with the trees that have been taken out there, it's beautified that what was already a scenic byway. So I'm excited to have this path included, and just mention that Oscoda Township is making plans to start Phase 4, which will take it from the Mill Street Bridge down to near the Baldwin Township line. And they're going to start that process this coming summer, I believe. So they were waiting to get their sewer project done. They've got that done. Now the path will go over the top of it. So by next year, this time, sometime around here, we'll have a path and go all the way from the Old Orchard Park all the way down to near the Baldwin Township line.
That'll be awesome.
And right now, the IET is in conversations with Baldwin Township to get them to look at doing their part to connect the remainder from Oscoda Township, which would then bring us all the way from Old Orchard Park all the way out through Alabaster. That little segment can be connected in Baldwin Township. So it's an exciting process and thing for the township. I think it's going to be a big deal when this is all completed for all the townships.
Big undertaking, and you've done a lot of it, Bill. I mean, you've been involved in a lot of it, so thank you for all
Yep.
your dedication.
Definitely.
Right, Steve, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. Jamie?
Yep, I got a couple things, and the first one might be a little lengthy. As the board will recall, in 2021, I had to bring to the board the fact that the bank reconciliations were not being done by the clerk. And he was 6 months behind. I hated to have to do that, but in the best interest of the township and not having the accounts balanced, afraid of being overdrawn and things like that, that I had to bring it to the board. Well, I find myself now in that same position again, and I'm asking now for the board to help. I've emailed Tammy several times with no reply to my email, but we have spoken in person at least once a quarter. She has mentioned that Josh needs to slow down and take his time with the accounts payable for the past year. I'm bringing this to you now because 2 incidences actually made me stop and think that when I grew up, you always were told, if you see something, say something. And at this point now, I need to say something. So the first one is that made me decide to bring this to the board was this week we received 3 more overpayments from vendors in check form that we paid well above what we were supposed to. The last one that concerned me is Mr. Palmer had a correction to the general ledger that we were supposed to do back in January, and it didn't get done for over a month. And the only reason it got done is I sent an email to Mr. Palmer, and I'm sure that he notified Josh, because then I seen that it was dated back to where it should have been fixed in the general ledger. I want to just take the time and thank my deputy. At the time, Vicki started this process of making a list of things, and Jane, as anybody well knows, is fabulous in the accounts payable system. She's the one that taught Josh how to, how it was supposed to be done properly, and she's great at it. She has always been. I just want to let the board know that in overpayments refunded to us, overpayments that are brought back to us, not including $20,735.81 to date. WEX finance charges paid and charged only for 4 months, that he's burying the finance charges in the expense line items is almost $4,000 because he is posting invoices and then the copies of the invoices and using statements as invoices. Another reason that this is happening is he's making payments from packing slips and then paying them again when the invoices arrive. And there's been a couple instances where it's happened within 5 days apart. You would think that you would be like, I think I just seen this, and check to make sure that hasn't been paid. Overrides to the BSNA system. You can't, by law, you cannot spend money that has not been budgeted. By law. That's not a policy, that's the law. Overrides have been done in the BSNA system. If you're asking you, it'll say if you're sure if you want to use that invoice number because it's already been used. And or adding a date or a customer number, et cetera, to the end of the invoice so that it goes through and it changes it and it'll get approved. Posting financial charges from multiple vendors to the expense accounts. That's a big no-no. I'm sure that's messing with a lot of the department heads' budgets. I would like to see a work session or something happen. One of the overpayments to a local vendor was $14,000, just one. I've been waiting since December, that December 6th meeting that the board approved that we were supposed to pay back our general fund for money that we borrowed. I need a journal entry to be done. That's what I'm waiting for. But we fired the only person that would be able to help them with the journal entry. So I can't move that money back. I have bond payments that are going to be due next month, and hopefully we have the money to pay those. And last but not least, Kratos. I'm sure everybody remembers that. We thought that we received the money back for that. We did not. Turns out that the money that we received was for DTE's summer tax bills. So that money is still owed, and that's over $40,000. So I would like the board to help me do something about this. And I let Tammy know about the Kratos thing as soon as I found out, and that was on 2/20. The only other thing I have for board comment is tomorrow is the last day to pay taxes. So if you haven't paid them, stop in and see us.
Great, thank you. I have no comment this evening.
I have one, Josh, I'd like at the next meeting you to respond to these accusations. Thank you.
I would like the board to sit down because I have every invoice that this talks about. Also, in an email that was sent to the board, Josh gave you a story that it was a Visa payment that he had talked to Tammy and I about, which is incorrect, because if you actually looked at the document that I posted with it, it was for the auto parts place. It wasn't even a Visa payment. So, two totally different things.
Okay. All right, so with that, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 8:31. Thank you.
So moved.